What is going on, my friends, and welcome back to the Crypto Catch Up. Of course, your number one place to catch up on crypto. Now, today we're going to be taking a quick look at Bitcoin and what's happening, not only from a price perspective, but also some massive news that we got last night. Something that I truly believe, if we continue in this direction, crypto and Bitcoin specifically will never be the same for the better. And so with that said, let's not waste any more time at all, and let's catch up on crypto. So first and foremost, we're going to go over what's happening with the price. Then we're going to take a quick look at some of the fundamentals. Then we're going to jump into the news, baby. So looking at Bitcoin's price, what we can see is that this thing is playing out kind of just like we talked about, right? About not yesterday, but the day before yesterday, as Bitcoin's price was pulling back. What I told you was all, listen, there's no need to stress, there's no need to worry. We just got rejected off the top side of this big old channel that Bitcoin's been stuck within for the last 6 or 7 months. And realistically, this is what you got to expect to happen. You're going to hit macro points of resistance. You're going to get rejections to the downside. It's normal. What we're on the lookout for is Bitcoin's price to be able to come back down, find some support, and use that support to retest the upside. Whether that's right here or whether it gets rejected even further back to the downside and then looks for the breakout to the upside, this is what I am expecting to happen. And unless some bad news happens, unless a bad catalyst happens, I do think that Bitcoin is gearing up to make the break of this channel. But again, it could be now, it could be a few weeks, it could still be a few more months. But I don't particularly see this happening again. I don't think we're going to go through another full cycle within this channel. But of course, I could be wrong. It's just my general thoughts. And so over the last 24 hours, what we can see is exactly what I'm talking about playing out. Bitcoin's price rolled back towards the downside, found some support on top of all of this resistance that we had from these two previous liquidity zones, and then used that liquidity, of course, to push itself back to the upside. Now, currently it is getting still rejected, and it's not able to push back above this resistance line. It's not able to break out of the channel. So that is an early implication that we may see some type of continuation back towards the downside. But obviously speaking, you can't really tell until it just starts to happen. So with that in mind, I am still sitting back waiting and watching. I'm not doing any buying on Bitcoin right now. I'm not doing any big trades, nothing of the sort. I'm quite simply just waiting to see if Bitcoin starts to pull back down towards some of these lower support levels, or if it finally gets that breakout of this macro channel that we've been in for the last 6 to 7 months. And so because of that, nothing special happening with Bitcoin's price right now, in my opinion, still in a waiting period. Now, that does very much so align with what we are seeing from a fundamental perspective. So let's kind of talk about it. Now, guys, don't forget, if you do want to trade some Bitcoin yourself on all the way up to 100x leverage, you can use the Margex link down in the description below. Guys, you don't need to KYC when you sign up and start trading, and that means that you don't have to give them your personal information. You just sign up, you just start trading, and you're actually going to get $10,000 or up to $10,000 in bonuses when you do sign up with that link down in the description below. So feel free to go check it out. This is where I do all of my trading personally because of all the collateral options, but of course, to each their own. Check it out if you like. Now, looking at the fundamentals, okay, what's happening here? Well, what I'm seeing from a fundamental perspective is further adding to my thesis right now that I'm just not doing any buying. You know, whenever we look at, say, the 24-hour visual screener, we can see that people just don't know. This is very balanced. People just don't know. Some people are closing short, some are opening shorts, some are closing long, some are opening longs. People just don't know, and it's actually very even. Whenever we look at something like our RSI heat map and we go out to, say, the 24 hours, this thing's sitting dead neutral. It's just right in the middle. You look at the 1 week, this thing's sitting a little bit below neutral, but it's still very much so dead neutral. You go out to something like let's go to our liquidation map, for example, just to give you another example of this. Boom. The 1 day. Equal liquidations nearly on the top side and the bottom side. This also is applicable to the 7 day. A very similar amount of liquidations if it goes up or if the market goes down. You took it something like, I mean, we have many more options, but I want to make this video somewhat quick. Let's go down to, let's just do the crypto fear and greed index. I mean, this is also just another one. Although people don't know what's going to happen, everyone is still greedy, right? And every single freaking thing that I look at here, every stat, every piece of data, they all show that this market is just in a weird spot, and it's not in the best spot to be buying. You know, the fact that we are seeing this market kind of pull back and cool down, but the freaking crypto fear and greed index is higher today than it was yesterday, it almost just doesn't make sense. It's just weird. And so because of that, in my opinion, I mean, we have to be very, very careful with where we are in this market right now. And considering the fact that Bitcoin's about to make a massive decision of whether or not we're going to push through this or whether we're going to get rejected, I think it makes a ton of sense as to why nothing is clear, because there is no clarity at the end of the day. No one truly knows what's going to happen here, and we won't until it starts to happen. And so because of that, from a price perspective and a fundamental perspective, I'm really not doing much right now, guys. I'm really not doing much right now. This just isn't the type of market that I would be going crazy on leverage in any direction in, personally. Now, looking at this thing from more of a news perspective, okay, this is where things do heat up. I will say this is where things do heat up. Oh, guys, also, I will let you know, Recently, I moved the Patreon to only being $4.99 a month. You get daily technical analysis from me, daily fundamental analysis from me, and you get my daily thoughts on news articles and stuff that do release. So feel free if you want extra content from me. It is down there below. Again, that's $5 a month if that's something you're interested in. Now, anywho, looking at some news, we got one piece of news that's pretty good, and we got one piece of news that could be very good. So piece of news number one that's pretty good is that the state of Pennsylvania passed a Bitcoin's right bill by a sweeping majority that included Republicans and Democrats in the House. Now, there's a couple reasons as to why this is important. Okay. Reason number one that I really liked is the fact that it's bipartisan, meaning that both Democrats and Republicans are agreed and signed on it. I think that this is important because the narrative that I have continuously been pushing here on the channel is that even if Kamala Harris does win, it's not terrible for crypto. I've told you all that the Republican and the Democratic Party do have their own personal incentives and reasons as to why they are trying to appeal to the crypto crowd. They understand that we have a force, we're a name, we have a voice, we are here and live in effect, and because of that, they're trying to appeal to us and capture us onto their side. And so because of that, there's not just a situation right now where the Republican Party is pro-crypto and the other one is anti-crypto. It's not the case. Both of them want to be in our good graces, and as a result of that, we're seeing both sides catering towards us, which is a reason why we're seeing bipartisan bills being able to be passed through something like the House. Now, another reason as to why this is good is because a primary factor and a primary driving force in some of the uncertainty that we saw just in this last bear market and kind of bull market was due to unclear legislation and unclear regulatory environments, especially here in the States. People quite simply just did not know what they could and couldn't do. They didn't know what was and wasn't allowed. They didn't know what to do with taxes. They didn't need to know what to do with their transactions. They just didn't know. And what we're seeing is that as time is going on, we're getting more clarity from the SEC, from the House, from the general government itself, right? We're starting to get more clarity from these legislational bodies that are telling us what is and isn't okay. And although we don't particularly need them to, it is important that we get that if we do want true, pure mass adoption, especially in the landscape of ETFs. And so because of that, although this isn't obviously groundbreaking news or anything, this is very good news because it is starting to solve some of the problems and check some of the boxes that need to be checked throughout this year. Now, the next piece of news that we got was this. Now, this is different. As I mentioned before in the very beginning of this video, if this continues in the direction that I think it's going to change crypto forever. We got here Microsoft to vote for or against assessment of investing into Bitcoin during shareholder meeting in December, the SEC filing reveals. Now, they did also go and say that Microsoft said they urged shareholders to vote against assessment of investing in Bitcoin because Microsoft's management already carefully considers this topic. Now, you may think, well, that sounds bad. That doesn't sound good. They're telling the shareholders not to vote for it. It's not bad. Listen. So the reason why this is not bad is because in a situation in which a company is having a meeting, right, or their shareholders are going to be voting for something and they're telling them, hey, don't vote for it, let us handle this. What this means is that they don't want to be forcefully mandated by their shareholders to make a move that they don't think is wise to make. Now, this doesn't mean that they're not going to invest in Bitcoin. It means that they're confident that with their analysts and the team that they have placed behind this division or department of whatever it may be, that they're confident that this team and that these analysts will be able to make the right decision whether it comes to investing in a Bitcoin or not, rather than being mandated to have to do so by their shareholders and then in a way in which they may not agree with. And so although it may seem like, oh, well, they don't want to invest in Bitcoin. What's happening here is that they have a strategy, they have a plan, and if it does involve investing in a Bitcoin, they want to execute that in a way in which isn't being forced by their shareholders, which could be not the way in which they want to do it, right? Now, you guys know that recently we got a freaking report from Bernstein that came out and said that they expect that by 2025 end, we will see Bitcoin hit $200,000. And the reason why they included that was because they do believe that many of these different companies are going to start using Bitcoin as a strategic reserve and that they're going to start adding it to their balance sheets. And 3 days later, we get news that Microsoft is starting to consider investing into Bitcoin and adding it to its balance sheet. You can call things a coincidence when you want, but when a $1 trillion company does something that a near $1 trillion company talked about just a few days ago, you got to start looking behind the scenes and reading between the lines. And so because of that, I truly do believe that Microsoft at some given point is going to heavily consider, if not in general, just invest in a Bitcoin. And I do do think most of big tech is also going to do it as well. I think Bitcoin falls perfectly in line with many of the goals and morals that these companies have whenever it comes to pure adoption and growth. And I do think that's going to allow it to be something that's more natively fit into their ecosystems of, what they invest in, what they add to their balance sheets, etc. And so because of that, my true belief here is that this is going to end up transpiring into some sort of investment. They just want to make sure that they do it on their own terms and how they want to do it, which I think is totally okay. So while people are thinking this is bad news, I think this is good news. And what I do believe is that if they're considering it, what do you think's happening with all these other tech companies? Microsoft is one of, if not the biggest company in the world, right? Whenever it comes to the tech space. And so it's not the biggest, but you get the point, right? It's one of the biggest. And if one of the biggest is out here doing something like this, what do you think number 80 is going to do? Number 60 is going to do? Number 40 is going to do? And when you start that domino effect, it doesn't stop. And so because of that, it may be, maybe we're at a spot where it does come to fruition, where Bernstein's, price prediction does come true, especially if we see a lot of this transpiring next year. And obviously I will be here, sitting right here for you, giving you news and updates as it does play out. And so because of that, although from a technical and fundamental perspective, things aren't looking the absolute best, from a news perspective, things are looking absolutely amazing. And I've noticed that a lot recently, is that a lot of this news isn't impacting this market. And I think it's purely because people are just waiting to see what happens with this presidential election, but value is building intrinsically and it can't be ignored. And so I will continue to update you here, guys. Don't forget, this is a brand new channel. We're not even 3 months old yet. We're pushing 1,500 and I think 30 subscribers or something like that right now. So thank you all so much for joining the channel. As I mentioned before, I do have a Patreon if you want some extra thoughts and insights and stuff from me, daily technical analysis, fundamental analysis, etc. It's all down there for you there. So of course, check that out if you like. I have a Margex link down for you traders as well. And I can't wait to see you all on the next one. Peace out, everybody.